Hey, welcome back to Be Still with Dr. Anita. I am Dr. Anita Marcasani. I'm a licensed psychologist with a PhD in clinical psychology. And here on this broadcast, we talk about the healing power of Jesus Christ. And we fuse that with the best of psychology so that you can have all the information that you need as you proceed on your journey towards emotional healing. Now, today, as I said, I mentioned the best of psychology. I'm going to talk about something that is actually not part of the best of psychology. So I want to preface all of my comments today by letting you know that I'm going to be exposing some things that I am very concerned about that are seeping into the mental health profession and have been for quite some time, by the way. This is not something that's new. What I am concerned about increasingly is the blurring of the lines between psychology, licensed mental health care, and that could be through social work or licensed family, marriage and family counselors. There's all kinds of licensed mental health professionals and what's known as the coaching world. So I want to unpack all of this. But first, I want to let you know that I take the perspective that the supernatural realm is real and it's serious and it can actually be dangerous if we don't know how everything actually works. And I don't pretend to know how everything actually works, but I have made it a personal quest to understand more about the supernatural realm and not in a woo-woo sort of world, because in my personal history, I have gotten sucked into new age occult type beliefs and some practices. So I am on high alert for those sorts of elements that come into the healing profession because they're becoming more and more mainstream, and it's very concerning. And I have mentioned this in a previous episode where I talked about meditation, how meditation is a standard treatment now for a lot of different mental health issues, particularly anxiety related issues. I mean, you're going to learn meditation. And that, if it is not taught within the Christian worldview and with a proper understanding and respect for the supernatural, the spirit realm, you could be opening your mind to any number of things that you're not even aware of when you empty your mind, which is many times what is taught in meditation in the mental health field these days. So I just want to let you know that I come from the perspective that the supernatural realm is real. There are demons, just as the Bible talks to us about. There's also powers, principalities, and authorities that represent, that are words, terms that the Bible uses, particularly Paul, that describe territorial authority given to certain spiritual entities, and that these entities actually have a lot more influence and power than demons, believe it or not. And I take all of that very seriously. I believe that it's real. It is biblical to believe that it's real. The Bible itself talks about all kinds of high level dark energy, dark spirits, and they names them Baal, Moloch, Ashtoreth, Apollo. I mean, you name it. The Bible talks about all of these things. So none of this is imaginary, and I am not imposing something into scripture that isn't there. So I say all of that because I want you to understand, if you're going to click away and think, well, I don't believe in all of that nonsense, Anita, so just, I'm going to pass this by. If there's any part of you that has ever been interested in or actually engaged in reading astrology, have you ever read your horoscope on a particular day or sought out your horoscope on a particular day? Have you ever done, even as a kid or a young person, tarot cards or used a Ouija board just because you were curious, you just wanted to know? Have you ever done any of those things? Have you ever done meditation for the purpose of understanding what else you could possibly be exposed to, other knowledge? If you've done even one of these things, you have actually engaged in an occult practice. And it means that there's a part of you that's interested in information that you don't currently have, that you believe some sort of supernatural entity has available for you. And you have engaged in some practice to try to access that information. Okay. And that's the thing that we want to really have caution about, because a lot of those practices are finding their way into the mental health field. What initiated me wanting to do this broadcast is On one of my social media sites, I'm in a group, and I was seeing these in this group are therapists, so licensed mental health professionals. And there's also what's known as coaches. Now, you may have heard this word. I actually have been working as a leadership coach since 2002. It's been the major focus of my practice for however many years that is, going on 19 years now. So it's been a major part of my life to incorporate coaching more than therapy or counseling. But being a licensed mental health provider, I'm able to, when I'm working with the client, understand when the client's needs might be better suited in a therapeutic setting as opposed to a coaching setting. So here's the difference. Mental health professionals, a licensed mental health professional has to go through a whole series of years of education, training, and experience. And then after all of that, they have to sit for some sort of licensing exam that the state in which they want to practice administers to them. And they have to score a certain level in order to provide licensed mental health care in whatever their specific profession has decided they need to do. So for psychology, to be a licensed psychologist in most states, you have to have a PhD. Well, all states, you have to have a PhD in either clinical or counseling psychology. You have to have some amount of supervised training within your education program, and then outside of that education program, so in a postdoctoral way for a certain amount of time. And then you have to sit for a licensing exam, and you have to pass at a certain rate that's determined by each state what the score is that you need to get on a national licensing exam. And then most states also have a state specific licensing exam that you have to pass, again, with a certain grade. And that's what licensed mental health professionals have to go through. So for me, it took me 8 years after undergraduate to go through all of that. Now, I had two babies along the way, so that slowed things down. A lot of people can get through it in 6 years, in as little as 6 years, and become a licensed mental health licensed psychologist. That's psychology. Other fields like sociology and licensed professional counseling, they have different parameters, just different rules around their specific field. But the point is that all licensed mental health professionals have to go through some degree of training, pretty sophisticated and high level training. And then the state has to do some sort of exam that licenses them, that kind of sanctions them. Yes, you can provide these services. The point of licensing, the theory behind licensing, is that it protects the public. So if you are not a licensed mental health provider, but you want to access licensed care, you need to make sure that the person from whom you are seeking help is qualified to do that. You don't want to just go to any Joe Schmo. You want to make sure that you are with someone who's qualified. And that also means someone who understands the ethics around the therapeutic or the counseling relationship and the counseling session, because there are boundaries that are important in the therapeutic session. And also not just the therapeutic session, but afterward, like contact outside of sessions, all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of ethics around all of this. And it's important that the therapist is aware of that and agrees to abide by those boundaries. Okay. And that's part of when I maintain my license, I have to say, yes, I am willing to abide by the ethical standards of my profession of psychology. Here's the problem. Coaches don't have to do any of that. Anybody, a 12-year-old could call themselves a professional coach. And if someone's willing to get services from that person, there's no legal definition of what defines who is a coach. So here's the problem. There is a growing number of coaches, people who call themselves coaches, some of whom are licensed mental health providers. And so that's a different category. Most of whom actually are not. And they are dealing in the mental health realm. Now, I want to say here, I'm not suggesting that licensed care is better than unlicensed care, because in my experience, I've encountered people who are unlicensed providers, and they really help people with psychological issues like anxiety. They really do. They seem to have this innate sense of, I call it like a therapeutic sense about them. They have this way of just being able to really help people out of tough times. And I'm actually also of the opinion that the way that the licensure process works is antiquated, and it really does need to be updated and become more flexible for what's going on out in the actual world. Now, having said all of that, you as a consumer, You don't know the difference. You just want someone to help you out of your distress. And my guess is you probably don't really care too much about what their qualifications are, other than they say they can help you. And then when you start working with them, they do help you. And maybe they have a track record of having helped a lot of people. So that could be your primary motivation. Okay, great. So whatever you choose, the point is that you understand what you're choosing and what's motivating that choice and why you're choosing the person with whom you're choosing, what that is, what the reasons behind that are, and what are the the pros and the cons. Just so long you understand that, that's really all that matters. Here's though what I'm concerned about today. I am concerned that the amount of new age and occult, so it's not even just like new age woo woo, mentality coming in. They're actually occult practices that are an inherent part of most coaching training programs. So most coach training programs, so programs that that anybody can go to because they want to be a coach, and that program will train them in how to be a coach. By far, most of them incorporate some sort of new age and or occult training and they teach their coaches, future coaches, how to do these things in order to access different information that gives better results to their clients. And then the coaches are just trained in this way and they don't know any better. So they just do what they've been trained to do in their training program. As a result, a lot of this stuff is coming into the mainstream and is infiltrating the coaching world. Here's the problem. There are a growing number of licensed mental health providers who are becoming coaches. And when they do that, they engage, they do what they should do, which is go to a coach training program to learn how to be a coach, because it's different to coach someone than it is to be a therapist for someone. It's a different mindset entirely. And when they're in these coach training programs, they are learning these same occult and new age practices and mindsets. Not only are they then bringing these approaches into their coaching with their coaching clients, but some of them are also bringing it into therapy with therapy clients who are open to it, or at least don't know any better. Now, here's the deal. When I engage in a counseling session with someone or a therapy session, I understand as a licensed provider that there is an inherent power differential within a therapeutic setting. That means if you come into my office and I can determine that you have depression, or maybe you have anxiety, or maybe you're in intense grief reaction, or you have a complicated grief process going on, whatever it is, I now know that you're operating below your optimal capacity. Okay. That your normal way of operating might be here. And then because of whatever you're going through, you're not operating quite up to your normal level of capacity. Right. So that means that you're vulnerable. You're vulnerable. And I respect that. And I need to make sure it is my ethical obligation to make sure I don't do anything to take advantage of the fact that I know that because of your depression, because of your anxiety, you may not be as, you're very vulnerable to things that I tell you, because you as a client automatically come into my office assuming that I have more knowledge than you do about how to help yourself out of a particular situation. So you're going to have a certain amount of trust, maybe not total trust in me, that develops with rapport over time, but you're going to have a certain amount of trust when you start therapy process with a therapist like me. Let's say you come in to work with me, you're automatically going to have a certain level of trust. And I am going to automatically know if you're coming to see me, it's probably because you're struggling and you might have some degree of vulnerability, openness that I need to take very seriously. And I need to make sure I operate within my ethical bounds to not take advantage of that in any way, shape, or form. Okay, that's how it's supposed to happen. Here is what initiated this whole video and this whole topic. When I was on this social media site and I was seeing these people, some of whom are both therapists and coaches, some are only therapists and some are only coaches, talking about how they are using new age and occult practices with their clients, some of whom are coaching clients, but here's what I'm concerned about. Some of them are therapy clients. Now, they say they are doing it with the consent of the client, and I don't doubt that they are. I have no doubt that they are. My problem is I don't know that the client understands what they're consenting to, because I'm not convinced that the therapist who's using some of these techniques understands how serious what they're doing actually is. Because if they did understand how genuinely serious and dangerous it is, and the amount of dark results, consequences that they are exposing both themselves to and the client to, I don't know that they would do it. Okay. Now, they may not believe in evil and they may not believe in the darkness. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Okay. So they're taking a stand and they're saying these occult practices are benign, or at worst, or at best, are actually helpful. And they're helpful in their mind because they're giving the client information or access to something beyond themselves in order to make their situation better. What I want to tell you is that the things that they're accessing to try to make their client situation better is darkness. You cannot know for a fact unless you approach the supernatural from a biblical worldview. You're not going to be able to discern whether the information that you're getting is from a malevolent source, which it most likely is if you're not discerning, okay? Or is it from something, a genuine message that God Almighty Himself, Yahweh, is sending to you or your client, or to your client through you? If you don't have a proper understanding and respect for the supernatural, you as a therapist don't really know what you're doing. I hate to tell you that. You think you do because you've been taught that it's okay and you've been doing it yourself, and maybe you have even benefited from it. And that's the real seduction, is that when you engage in these occult practices, they work. They give you power. They do give you access to information. The problem is that the source of the power is evil, and you're eventually going to have to pay that back. So it is a very, very serious thing. So I just wanted to read some of the comments that some of these coaches or therapists, or both, some people are both like me, have been saying in this group. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this sort of stuff has infiltrated into the mainstream mental health and coaching world at a level that I didn't even totally appreciate until last week when I saw all this stuff. Okay. So here's just some of the comments. All right. I'm a therapist, but also a lifestyle and mindset coach. I incorporate tarot, astrology, and Enneagram in my work with coaching clients. And then this person saying, you do you. He's trying to give support to someone who asked a question. Hey, is it okay to use this stuff in therapy and coaching sessions? That's what initiated this whole thread. And then someone asked, hey, do you consider it appropriate for therapy to use these techniques? Remember, he's using tarot cards, astrology, and Enneagram in with coaching clients. So someone asks, hey, do you consider this appropriate for therapy? And the person responds, I think it can be if the client is interested. I tend to encourage them to explore it if they feel drawn to it and to take the lead with it. So, I mean, to do a tarot card reading in a therapy session, I don't even know what to say. Okay. And then here's somebody, this is a person who is a therapist. And so she's talking about how she picked her own therapist, because most therapists have been through therapy. That's not at all uncommon because therapy works, by the way. So all of this to say, I don't want you to be shy about accessing licensed mental health and appropriate mental health care. If you have a problem, go get help. What I want you to do is to be very aware of these alternative strategies that your therapist might be encouraging to you to use. And as a Christian, even as a non-Christian, I want to discourage you from using these techniques. Even if your therapist says, oh, what's the harm in pulling a couple tarot cards? There's a huge harm in it. Okay. So this person says, I picked my therapist specifically because she incorporates astrology in her therapy sessions. I have clients who specifically pick me because I'm a Reiki master and I talk about tarot on my website. Somebody else chimes in and says, I use sextrology. I don't even know what sextrology is. And relational astrology in my coaching. What's relational astrology? I don't know, but it has the word astrology in it, so I'm not thrilled about it. And then now, I don't know if this person is talking about coaching clients or therapy clients, but she says, my last few clients, I was led to offer a chakra reading, and it helped to build their affirmations and build their confidence. It was such a great addition. Somebody else says, I don't think it's insane at all. Just a relative, I don't want to give away too many identifying details here, had a large practice that she developed many, many decades ago using her metaphysical arts and knowledge. And then this person says, I'm with you. I'm a therapist, but so totally being drawn to energy work and tarot and ecotherapy. I don't know what ecotherapy is. Not sure how to make it all come together. This person now says, I'm a professional astrologer and a coach. I'm also a teaching assistant in our transpersonal coaching program. So this person trains coaches. We have lawyers who turn tarot students, they turn into tarot student, astrologers, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very common, and your professional coaching will only bring more authenticity and professionalism to these industries. And then, okay, so this is a coaching person. So these are coaching clients, I believe. Do what you're called to do that reaches your highest good. And that's a very common theme in coaching. You reach your highest good. And as if there's accessing information out there that's going to help you become self-actualized and reach your highest good. I don't want to reach my highest good. I want to always reach for Jesus Christ. I can't be good without him. I can't reach my highest anything. He is the most high. I want to do what he says I should do. And whether it's my highest good or not, my highest good is Jesus. And I can't possibly attain his status. Okay, so I can't be good. Therefore, there is no highest good. As an aside, if you're self-actualized and feel pulled to incorporate these strategies, then do. I incorporate tons of energy healing modalities, which is code for occult. Acupuncture. Now, by the way, I don't know where I stand on acupuncture. So just as an aside on that specific modality, I'm not 100% convinced it's occult, nor am I convinced it's benign. I don't know where I stand on that yet. So just, maybe you do, and I'd love to hear your comments. Okay. Mindfulness, affirmations, oracles, essential oils, and somatic embodiment into my therapy sessions. And the problem, the issue here is that these are therapists who now feel so confident using these occult practices that they are incorporating them into their work with people. And if you as a client are vulnerable and you don't know any better, you're just going to do it because you would assume that the therapist has some sort of more knowledge and can be trusted than the ordinary person. So here's the situation. Let's look at Deuteronomy 18 and find out what God thinks about these practices. Because I want to remind you, these practices are not dangerous because they're imaginary. They're dangerous because they're dangerous, because they work. They work to connect you with some entity in the spirit realm. They work. And that's the problem, because when you break that boundary that exists between the natural and the spirit realm, and then you access these supernatural entities, you have then opened a major door to some potentially, probably very dark spirits impacting you. And the seduction is the way these dark spirits seduce is by giving you that power, making you think that you now have all this power in your personal life to make things happen, make the things that you want to have happen. They can do that for you. They can, because they're powerful. They don't have the authority in Christ Jesus to use the power, but if you allow them by connecting with them and seeking that connection first, guess what? You are allowing them to have access to you, your spirit, as well as your mind and your body. So let's see Deuteronomy 18. And this starts at verse 9. When you come into the land, so he's talking to the Israelites as they're about to go into their promised land. And the promised land has people there who are worshipers of other gods that do exist, by the way. God wouldn't say he's the most high if there is nothing over it for he's supposed to be over, okay? So when you come into the land that the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not learn to follow the abominable practices of these nations. He calls them abominable. There shall not be found among you anyone who burns his son or his daughter as an offering. You may think, oh, that's ridiculous. There are societies that are their patron God, that the gods that they serve do require them to sacrifice on a sacrificial fire their children. Okay, it happens now and it happened then. And if you think it's not happening now, there's a whole world that you're not aware of. Okay, so anyone who practices divination or tells fortunes or interprets omens, or a sorcerer or a charmer or a medium or a necromancer, or one who inquires of the dead, for whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord your God is driving them out from before you. All right. These practices are abominable because so the word divination means breaking that, it's an act that breaks the boundary between the natural and the supernatural. So that's kind of what divination refers to. So it's any action or process that you engage in that seeks supernatural input or access or whatever. That's what the word divination means. We are not supposed to do that. We are only supposed to seek Jesus. End of story. Anything else is not Jesus. And that's why we're not supposed to do those things, because those things, they do hook you up with some sort of supernatural entity. That's not imaginary and it's not fictional. It's true, which is why we're not supposed to do it. So you as a Christian, if you're a therapist and you're involved in any of this, please, I beg of you please contact me, send me an email. I will help you with this. If you're leading clients into this, you're not going to be held blameless. Anytime you become a spiritual leader at any level, even if it's only inside a therapy session or a coaching session where you are teaching spiritual practices, you're responsible for that. I'm responsible for that. I take it very, very seriously, incredibly seriously. You need to as well. Now, if you are a client or you're just a regular person, and I want you to know that these practices are an abomination to God. And it's not because they hurt his feelings, it's because they're going to hurt you. And he wants you to be safe. And the only way that you're safe is if you're within his spiritual realms, which means that you adhere to his rules and his guardrails, so to speak, around how to interact with the supernatural, which means you only interact with the supernatural when it comes from God. And you can't know that unless you apply what's happening to you against the truth of the word of God. Okay. So this is something that's really, I couldn't believe it when I was reading this on my social media group. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is actually happening in therapy sessions. And as I mentioned a couple episodes ago, the fact that our mental health has just gone down the toilet before COVID and then since COVID, because as therapists, as the mental health profession, we've done a rotten job of giving community coping strategies to people. We just have. And I believe it's possible that in doing some of these practices that we think were relieving their symptoms, it was actually opening them up to more problems later on. I think that's possible. So please, the take-home message here is that if you are a consumer of therapy services, if you need therapy, go get it. Go get it. Don't hesitate. Don't hesitate. But the minute your therapist starts to incorporate any kind of modality or procedure or suggestion that involves a blurring of reality and the spirit or supernatural realm, that's where I want you to have your guard up. You don't need to have your guard up for other things. You can trust a licensed mental health provider, okay? And please go get that help. Please go get that help. Don't suffer. Don't suffer. but just have your guard up, because these practices they come with consequences. And just because they seem to work, you don't understand what you're exchanging in order for this outcome to have happened in your life. Okay, I hope that this was informational to you. I hope that you got more, just more education about some of this stuff. If you are a therapist, I hope that this gives you things to think about, especially before you go into your next therapy session. Please feel free to subscribe to this. I'd love if you do that. Give me your comments. I want to hear what you have to say about all of this. You know, I think it's from what I'm seeing on social media, it's going to become an exploding process, because people are hungry for the supernatural, and the church at large over the past 100 years has done a bad job of meeting the needs, the spiritual needs of its flock. And now people are gravitating towards other stuff because there is a need, a yearning for the spiritual. And they're reaching out for anything. And if the church is not prepared to meet their needs with really understanding the spirit realm so that we can properly guide them what not to do, and here's what you can do: you access Jesus. And that is your only access to the spirit realm, nothing else. You go through Jesus, okay? He's our mediator right now, okay? We have him available, so we can come boldly to the throne of God through Jesus Christ. That's the only way. When he said, I am the way and the truth and the life, he was serious. He's the only mechanism through which we can approach God and get into access anything supernatural. All right. Don't forget to hit like. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you like this. Don't forget to share it on social media. And don't forget to give me your comments if you have any. Until we meet again, be still and know that he is God.